Having spent most of their lives behind bars, do most hardened criminals linger on after death? Join us as we explore a 100-year-old prison to find out. Among the living, we'll take a look at auras, the colorful energy said to surround all living things. If we drop a pebble in a pond, the vibrations ripple outward in circles. If we ring a bell, it vibrates in waves. But can we see those waves? Susan O'Leary investigates how sound can be visually experienced.
Visual music is an art medium with a long, yet hardly known history. Led by Ralph Abraham, a retired mathematics professor from the University of California at Santa Cruz, a team of visual artists have been able to more deeply explore the combination of music and math.
This all began about 20 years ago when I was trying to use computers to teach mathematics at the University of California.
What began was a lifelong exploration into new theories of mathematics as it relates to music.
Since my field is dynamics, we had moving pictures in mind, which we were at that time unable to show on the computer screen.
Computers are the main instrument and link between the mathematics and music. Abraham programmed a computer called Mimi with intricate mathematical formulas to produce video images.
We see mathematical models for sound waves visually, and mathematical models for many other dynamical phenomena. Mathematical models are used in the sciences as a language and as a means of analyzing natural phenomena.
Through specially designed computers and chaos theory, mathematics can be seen for its beauty. This new medium allows people to appreciate the mathematical world through its relation to music. Ralph Abraham isn't the only one who's been creating a visual form of mathematics and music. A group called Art Matrix ties in fractals with genetic coding of DNA.
We use computer graphics to just look around and explore models which are too complicated to analyze by the means of traditional mathematics.
To produce images for a concert held at a cathedral in New York, the computer takes sound waves and breaks them down into numbers, which are then taken and made into pictures. So, Ralph, how does all this come together?
Well, this is a small-looking but actually very large computer which is able to do the millions of computations per second necessary to draw this picture. The color at each point on the screen is computed by an enormous number of computations that are part of a mathematical model. And at one point on the screen, the color keeps changing in different ways that are determined by the mathematical model. And the color actually represents a number. It might be a number between 1 and 10. And when it's closer to 10, it's red. And when it's closer to 0, it's blue.
So where does the music fit in?
To coordinate the sound, the oral music, with the picture requires an artistic act of composition. That's where Amy comes in. She does composition with a written score, with elaborate plans, and with this, the screen of this computer is an elaborate flow diagram that shows where all the data is going and all the computations being done on it. So all of this tremendously complex network is involved in translating the picture into the sound. Well, behind the scenes here, behind the pictures, behind the sounds, are the numbers in the mathematical model. And that's where Peter comes in. Peter, could you show us?
In other words, the silicon graphics generates a bunch of numbers that we feed into the Macintosh. Musical instruments generate numbers we feed into the Macintosh. The Macintosh combines those and controls the synthesizer to make the sounds that we hear.
And we discover amazing things which we can't express in words or symbols. They're just these unusual moving pictures. Mathematics and music, that's a classical partnership. So every science, physical science, biological science, social science, every science has mathematical models, and they're all using basically the same kind of models, and those are the ones that we're studying. Mathematics, music, and mysticism, the three M's, that's again the classical trinity. Through the Middle Ages, when every student studied algebra, geometry, music, and astronomy. So these four things, the motions of the planets, and the motions of waves in the sea and the resonance of sound waves when you hear them. All of this was seen as aspects of mathematics. I also just want to share with people the beauty of mathematics, which has been invisible until computer graphics came along. Now not only mathematicians see in their mind's eye, but anybody can see on the screen.
Well, he said anyone could do it, so I thought I'd give it a try.
Am I making any pictures over there?
Not yet.
Clearly, the sound waves have to be created before you can have the images. But once there's music, there's beauty.
Crop circles are mysterious formations that appear overnight in fields throughout the world. Without being broken, tall corn or grain stalks spiral outwards in beautiful patterns. While some believe crop circles are hoaxed, others think they are landing pads for alien spacecraft. But circles found recently in England turned out to be universal mathematical symbols. Because of the complexity of these new circles, researchers believe the symbols to be a form of communication to mankind. Terrifying tales of a brutal murderer and cannibal still haunt the small town of Rawlins, Wyoming. Can a prisoner's cruel past condemn him to his cell for all eternity? Our story starts here at the Wyoming Frontier Prison, formerly the state penitentiary. The prison closed in 1981, but some believe the spirits of a few inmates still remain behind the prison walls. Some of the worst murderers in the history of Wyoming spent their last days in the death house before their execution.
This is the death house, and I think this place in history sounds a lot different feels a lot different than any place else in the prison. The one that really scares me is the guy on the backside. This cell belonged to, I think, the worst murderer in the history of Wyoming. When we do night tours, his candle always burns brighter or dimmer than any of the others. I don't know, I feel a little uncomfortable talking about him.
There's many times the hair on your back will stand up. You're fully aware that something is there, what you don't know. Pixley is tremendously scary. Even when you're doing tours and you're talking about him, as a tour guide, you always get a sense that this is maybe something you shouldn't be talking about. You'll get the creeps and the willies. And the candles will flicker. His will be straight. The other candles on the night tours will flicker. There's definitely something to his story, I'm sure.
The last execution, Andrew Pixley in 1965, he's the youngest guy executed here. He was 22 years old. And when he was executed, they wanted to make sure that there was no leaks in the gas chamber. Usually they go by a pig, but this time they went out onto the streets of Rawlins and they found a stray black cat. And they executed it. Black cat supposedly haunts the penitentiary. I was running out of A block one night after I came out of the cell, and I was running around and this black cat darted out in front of me. And he went around the corner, and another tour guide, Molly, was waiting for me there, and it darted out in front of her, and it just disappeared. And every once in a while we see him, but he's lurking around every night tour.
The one that scares me is the guy who was in the middle cell, Andrew Pixley. He was 21 years old when he committed the most horrible murder in the history of Wyoming. Family from Chicago on a ski vacation, Jackson Hole. He murdered 2 little girls. There was evidence of cannibalism. The beatings were so horrible. There are elements of Pixley's case that, in my opinion, are almost worse than Jeffrey Dahmer. He had the least witnesses. He had the most ministers. He was praying right at the time of his execution. He was baptized just for his execution.
Andrew Pixley was described as the perfect psychopath. He had no conscience at all. He didn't remember any of the heinous crimes committed when they found him in the room covered with blood. His execution was carried out shortly after midnight, December the 10th, 1965, in the prison gas chamber. Andrew Pixley took longer to die than any other man in the death house.
He lived twice as long as all the others in the gas chamber. They say it takes longer to kill evil, and I'm convinced this guy was pure evil. And I mean, I'm not a big proponent of capital punishment, but this Pixley character, he scares me to death because the crime was so horrible. Is the prison gas chamber. The mechanics of the gas chamber. The warden pulled a pin on the side, dropped this handle. A bag full of cyanide pellets rolled into acid below the chair. Prisoner was unconscious in 10 to 15 seconds. They were all dead within 3 minutes, except for Andrew Pixley. The witnesses were in the back room. For the first execution, there were 47 people in this room. By the time Andrew Pixley was executed in 1965, there were 13 people. They changed the seals around the windows before the execution. And then, as I said before, they test the gas chamber to make sure it's working all right. We don't give tours in December. I'd been sitting in my office. I'd been researching the executions. We were doing a new display on the executions. I had a head full of stories of executions, but I didn't have all the dates. And I came up here, it was getting kind of late, and I needed a flashlight to read the dates of the walls on the hanging room. I was writing to the dates and with my flashlight in hand, and my flashlight drifted over and I caught the black eyes of Andrew Pixley. As I looked deep into his eyes for the first time, I thought, there's something different about this guy. I'd never thought about it before. Something evil, possessed, demonic. At the instant I thought that, I swear to you, I heard something. I didn't recognize it at first, but behind me, I heard the faint sound of crying. Not just crying, young girls crying. And the sound of the crying was coming from the gas chamber. I was scared to death. Fumbling with my keys, I turned around and I'm walking to get out of here as fast as I can. When I got outside, and I thought about this, I mean, why just at that moment did I hear the crying? And why did I hear it then? And then I heard the church bells ringing a few blocks over, the Catholic Church. And the first thing I thought was Andrew Pixley had renounced the Catholic faith shortly before his death. And then I realized it was December 10th, 1965. His execution was just a few minutes after midnight that day.
Andrew Pixley's sentence was death, but his soul is the grim reminder that not all is at peace.